All right, hello everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and very special welcome to Carol M, Amber, and Tara Starr. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. So
Merry
glad to
Christmas,
see you.
everybody.
And hello to Corky and Happens and Kate in the chat room, and I'm sure other people will be joining us soon. So it's great to get back together again, and it's the 27th day of December in the year 2022. So we're almost done with this year, and I'm looking for new beginnings. I'm ready for new. And
Mhm.
no, I don't know. I just feel some kind of hope. I don't. It doesn't make sense to be hopeful, but yet I'm still hopeful. Um, so
You have to be.
let's start with that. How about you, Tara? Are you hopeful for 2023?
I'm so hopeful. I have the faith. I think that, if we look back at our progress, well, Merry Christmas, everybody. Hopefully everyone had a good holiday. And I think that, that's why we have so much that we can already tell stories about, because we're like, and going through the thickness of war and what it's been like, and I just feel like we're definitely entering a new arena, because we can kind of tell by how challenging it's been so far. But I do believe that we do have a lot to look forward to, and I really hope that this year is a year that we recognize how much that we have actually kind of learned and kept going on that same momentum.
I agree. I think the stuff that we've learned, even in the past, to me, in the past month, I have learned so much. And I think, I don't know if we're over the tipping point or not, but we're almost there if we're not there yet. And once it starts rolling down the hill, well, look out, because there's going to be big changes when people start realizing what the degree of deception and just outright evil that's been practiced upon us all. And yet we are still hopeful, right, Carol?
Oh yeah, we definitely are. And I agree with you. I mean, I this time of year I always like to focus on the return of the light, because it is after the snow, it just started pouring down rain. But I do feel it. And yet, just like you, John, I'm not sure why. Because there's also the new, contagion, uh, the thing that John's talking about, which was just like Event 201. I mean, we're repeating it, and yet it's starting to unravel and it's also starting to really spread. It seems like there's more and more people that are catching up, following the work that's been done by, not just our group, but everything has moved out in a big web, and you can hear it from other sides. It feels so great. It doesn't matter where it's coming from as long as it's continuing to spread. But yet, there's all these scary things with the WHO and all that's going. But I just feel that that's not what's going to happen. It's still going to be hairy, though. The food running out or whatever else happens that we've been warned about, could things some of it could happen, but it doesn't seem to be as bad as we expect. We're still here, we're still working, we're still happy about being together, and yep, I feel good. How about you, Amber?
Well, I think my big, I feel good, but I'm trying to redirect it and look at it as to my reaction rather than the action that takes place. So we always hear that we're more powerful than we know as citizens, we're more powerful than we know as created people, we're more powerful than we know when it comes to tapping into all of our energy sources and how we're truly connected. And I think sometimes when we're discombobulated ourselves or we're full of fear, and for me, it's anxiety and trying to read the tea leaves way before the tea leaves make their presence known, that brings on some kind of uncertainty. And then it has me question everybody. And then when that happens, like the dark side of Star Wars, you end up wanting vengefulness or I'll show you, or you can't get to me. So I think my concentration is going to be more so on how I respond in a way that's um, from more of a higher realm rather than a reptilian kind of basic. I'm mad, I'm
Mhm.
angry, I'm hungry, I'm sad, I'm tired, I'm frustrated. But how can I look at it from a different level? How can I meet someone where they are instead of demand that they meet me where I am, or at least meet in the middle, and try to have more patience, but not so much patience that I allow evil to encompass me all around, because we're given the strength to push it away. We're given the strength to not allow it near us. And so I think concentrating on how I respond and how I react, and each time learning um, because no matter how I respond, I'm sure I could do it better, and reflecting on it each time with a humbleness rather than a cockiness. And for
Mhm.
me, whenever someone starts something and I'm like, don't start nothing, won't be nothing, kind of hot headed person, I have to kind of breathe in and think how best to respond to get the result that I'm praying, wishing, or hoping for. And so I'm going to work on myself and see what I can harness within myself to create a better world for me and my family and my friends and my neighbors and all of those that I care about so much, and even those I don't even know.
I
Love
see
it.
Mark Housatonic is in the chat room, and Merry Christmas to you, Mark, and everyone else. And
Yeah. Hi.
Merry Christmas, Mark.
because I learned so much from Mark, and I
Mhm.
was just this afternoon watching a show on Rumble by JJ Couey, Couey, and I must say, folks, you got to watch this man. He's the reason I got my last strike, because I featured him, a picture of him on my show, and I talked about what he was saying. I didn't say any of it was medical information. I just said, this is what this guy is saying. But, they pulled it down. So that's why we're only on McDuff Lives 1 tonight. We don't have Channel 3 or Channel 2, because if either of them gets another strike, then they're gone. So we're on thin ice here on YouTube. But McDuff Lives 1 is okay. So stick here on McDuff Lives 1 for the next couple of weeks while those other strikes expire. Um, anyway, what was I saying? I was saying that from him, and he goes under Gigaome Biological, and I've given you two, JJ Couey in that way so you can find him, because I really think his work is very important. And as people like him and from around the world, other people that are duplicating the same work start to figure out certain conclusions about this alleged medical disaster that we've been through, and the real disasters, the real actual, the excessive deaths, the deaths of our old people in particular, that could have, well, I'm not going to go there because I don't want to lose this channel, but uh, enough said. I think that that's an example of where there's just too much information coming out for them to keep the narrative going, and I sure do hope so. So that's why I mentioned his name, to get other folks to look at what he's done statistically, and I will also mention Dennis Rancourt, Rancourt, because the numbers don't lie, and it's really a remarkable conclusions that these guys have come to, which I will not repeat here for obvious reasons. But anyway, that's part of my hope, is that this whole thing is going to start unraveling and fast. And I'm not one of those that needs to see heads roll. I just need to see it
Mhm.
exposed. My God, and make it stop. Just make it stop.
Mhm. Make
Too.
it stop. Yeah, and there's so much more than even just the medical issues too. You had Alana Freeman on your show,
Yeah.
and she's amazing. And I did have her book, but I hadn't. Yeah, or the other one, this one.
Yeah. I have.
Yeah, this one is really scary.
I don't have that one yet. I've got this, and I've got the chemtrails one. And but
Yeah.
anyway, well, you say scary, but what's really going on here is exposition of projects that have been going on for a long
Mhm.
time, and
Exactly.
we've just got to start looking at that. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys, just as an opinion about, because on my show I take on a lot of topics, and one of the ones that I've been interested in, even long before I started my show, is the issue of what's going on in the sky, and why are these contrails, staying up there for 3 hours, and just all of those questions. I started taking photographs of the sky, back in 2014, 15, and have all kinds of anomalies that I could show you that I thought, that deserves some study. And then I've studied a number of the websites that do that, and you know, there's some of them that I think are really, really good, and but some of them I'm afraid that they're just going to steer you into a different direction, because they're, the ones that are obviously well financed, that's like, oh wow, he wants me to follow, where he's going. Whereas what I just want to do is to step by step break it down and understand it. But my question is, should I spend a lot of time on this in the next year? I could see myself spending a lot, but my own heart tells me to go in a different direction,
Mhm.
to stick with my historical and political studies, as much. And I love Atlanta; she's a delight to talk to. But I want to keep her in the loop, but I cannot. I don't think I can be, a torchbearer
Mhm.
right now in this. You see
Well,
what I'm?
what you do and what you've done the last few years has just been so important for all of our understanding of the history, and how far back it goes and how deep it goes. And so, I think you're exactly right to just keep taking it in that direction, because you're so good at it, and we love listening to you. Alana is. I mean, I agreed for the other ospreys to do a deeper dive into the frequencies. So, and I'm interested in it. So I did take her book seriously. And to me, this new book, Geoengineered Transhumanism, is kind of the equivalent of Kennedy's book on the real Anthony Fauci, where he goes so deep into all the papers that have been written, a
Mhm.
lot of which we were familiar with, but he brought the receipts, as George says. And that's what she's done to just the history is really long. And in 1932, they were already working, or shortly thereafter, they actually had altered the Van Allen radiation belt. And it's things like this that I had no idea about, that she goes into a lot of detail. And so it is something I don't really want to look at. In a way, I've put it off because it's difficult. But what I see happening with the bioweapons and all the work that so many people have done on that, we have to do the same thing for this too. So I'm not going to stop, I guess, even though I want to go in a different direction.
Well,
But I'm going to keep looking.
well, I would say, John, follow your gut, because right now
Mm-hmm.
it seems like to me that every 5 minutes we're thrown another refocus, another angle, and it adds to the chaos.
That's
And so
true.
I find that every
Mm-hmm.
time I turn on social media or the news, or I talk to a friend, I'm led down another alleyway, another, way to look at things, especially with things that I've already reviewed before, and I already have somewhat of a grasp on. But when we're dealing with crisis is happening due to things that have taken place in the last couple of years and where we're going to go. I think that serves as a forefront with you talking about the history of this is what people are capable of, because we know it, because that's been the history of their behavior. So looking at it from that perspective and touching point on these things, I think is really good. But I think drawing all your focus and moving from what your gut tells you, it's just, it adds a little bit to the chaos in which we're all in a hurricane tornado, and we're not able to focus in and drill down on the things that are affecting so many people around the world right now.
Oh, Well said. It's not that it's not important. It's just probably is just as important. And who knows? One day we might find out that this work is the most important of all that's going on. But we don't know that for sure yet. And
Mhm.
and I really feel that my enlightenment is still continuing to grow. I was saying to Marcia the other day that I feel like at some point I want to, instead of just being somebody that asks questions and reads books, is somebody that actually teaches what's going on. But I do not feel like I have grasped the material well enough to act like a guru. And I don't want people to go, oh well, according to John O'Loughlin, blah 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 blah. I think that thinking out loud on my show when I do my mind fields, it really helps me to.
Mhm.
I'm trying to communicate with you at the same time that I'm following my thoughts, and it seems to work pretty well.
Well,
Until
John,
Oh,
you have
it's
to
great.
remember, you have to
It's
remember that
fabulous. Yeah.
teachers actually read you books. Teachers actually teach you history.
Mhm.
Teachers
yeah,
Yeah,
actually go over curriculum and things that people have forgotten to get you back on path. So you are teaching. You may
yeah,
not be aware of it.
exactly.
A lot of
Mhm.
times teachers don't just go off the cuff to talk about what they want to. They're following a curriculum. They're describing a math problem that they need to learn. They're describing a chemistry that's already been known. So you're
yeah,
just going over material that people need to know, and that's essentially 80% to 90% of a teacher's job. And then they add in a few things of their own experiences, or kind of like to give an explanation by using examples that may not be in the book when describing particular things. But I think you are teaching, not to try to say, oh no, and discount what you're saying, but I think you're already teaching.
Mhm. Oh,
Yeah, I don't think none of
undoubtedly.
us want teachers that I think they know everything, you know? It's like that's part of what we come together networking to do is that we each kind of follow our hearts, maybe, or follow the breadcrumbs or wherever we get to. And it is really specialized for each individual. And yes, we do come together in groups, and that is absolutely amazing. And there's always those overlaps going into, different arenas. But, so some point in sourcing, you might be saying, quoting John O'Loughlin, you know what I mean? Because that's part of the networking. And one of the things that I especially love is um, hearing somebody's viewpoint. It's like it's so anti talking head
yeah,
that
Mhm.
it's refreshing. It's just like being able to hear like live versions of songs that we've heard the same recorded version over and over. It's just refreshing to have different angles. And I think I'm definitely with you guys as far as like some things you're like, oh, this person is really doing a good job focusing on that. And I couldn't see myself going too much down that route, but I sure am glad that they're taking care of it because some for all the dirty jobs or all the darker aspects that we have to learn about, there are these particular people that have the knack for kind of being able to do that particular deep dive, and then they can summarize it for us, and we appreciate it so much because we didn't want to spend the time necessarily diving on that.
I'll just jump in and say that there maybe maybe almost 10 years, no, 5 or 6 years ago, I've happened upon a YouTube channel that's aimed at high school history students. And it's this teacher guy. And believe it or not, his last name is Ritchie. As many times as we talked about the name Ritchie on my show, he spells it Richey, but Ricci, same. And he teaches for the test, like the AP history test. So if you want to pass the AP history test, then you can watch this guy, Tom Ritchie, and he will tell you, all you need to know about, Louis the 16th or, Marie Antoinette or all of those things. And I'm watching his show, and one time I saw up on his shelf he had three little awards, and each of the awards had a shape that comes out like a six. So you're seeing 666 up on his shelf, right over his shoulder, and then I saw at least a dozen of his shows that was like that. And he changed his set after a while, and then I went back and saw him again, and instead of having the sixes, he's got three hexagonal features sitting on his desk, like three hexagonal, hexagon is six, right? So this guy is telling everybody that it's okay to let your children study with him because he's in the club. You know, he's cool. He's in the club, and you know, so I'm thinking what I'd like to do is to start an anti AP history course to try to say what's really happening. you know,
And
I
teach those comms and teach that stink eye and be like, what
Mhm.
is this?
Yeah. Well, John, when you're teaching and you do your asides, they're so valuable. You just stop and you think for a moment and you add your added value, and it's just so lovely and so wonderful. And I think you do that really well with the interviews too. And when you say stop right here, I don't quite understand this. Let's go back a little bit,
um,
and you really pull stuff out of the material or the people in such a beautiful way. So it's been a big important part of our education these last 3 years or
well,
more.
thanks for staying with me. I tell you, it's been rough trying to keep up with YouTube and avoiding those stupid strikes, because the
Hmm.
strikes, it's just like what you were saying. It would be nice to be able to just hear somebody talk. And
Hmm.
that's all that they're doing. They're not saying, here is the latest information on the medical condition of the day, and here's how you need to treat it. No, nobody's saying that. People are saying, what? What's funny? I read this study in University of Minnesota, and it said, this, and about monkey viruses and things. And next thing you know, shh, you're gone.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I did,
hopefully that's going to change.
I did see, and you guys might have seen it, was going around on Twitter, was an actual medical, one of those medical journal things that you can see the abstract of, and it said, SV40, we put it in the polio virus, in the
Hmm.
polio vaccine. I said, man, that's where I got it. That's where I got my cancer. And I did all that work with Ed Haslam, and God bless him for writing that book, Dr. Mary's Monkey.
Hmm.
um,
Wow.
I've got to republish all of those videos I did with Ed down in Bradenton, Florida, a couple of years ago, and so many great people have contributed to my knowledge. But like I say, I'm still like, wow, trying to wrap my hands around just enough but I do. The other thing that I wanted to say is I really do feel like I've made a lot of progress in understanding just how important the um, the division between people who uh, the British empiricism, the Malthus and the Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith stuff, where nothing is of any value whatsoever unless you can count it, weigh it, see it, touch it.
Hmm.
There's no value to human spirituality whatsoever. It doesn't exist in their calculations, and that's the British Empire's math. That's how they do their math. And as far as what happens to the humans, well, that's not their problem. That's just, God made this planet, and now it's their job to clean it up. And sure, a lot of the humans are probably not necessary. If they die, that's not my problem. That's just laissez-faire. Let things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and that means all those people that are going to die because I did this, well, that's not really my fault. It's just because I knew what progress was, and they didn't know how to do progress. So that has developed itself so much right now into this thing that they call Satanism. And we could talk about the esoteric crap behind it, and the the Baphomet statue that they famously unveiled a couple of years ago, bringing children in to worship it, and the, all of that is an attempt to, and I will add to that the dancing nurses and the dancing doctors, because they're under a spell. You know,
Hmm.
this is all satanic. All of this is trying to teach humanity to go back in time to when, the best guess we had was, oh, there's gods out there that we need to be afraid of. And, hopefully some big, strong person will protect us from those evil gods. And, so I'm going to go and supplicate myself before the latest emperor or king for protection. They want us to go back to that mentality where we're scared of everything, don't know what to do, don't know what's going on, and can be easily led to whatever ends they want. And that is so prevalent in our culture, in our popular culture. That everything that they produce, whether it's Netflix or television or especially Disney, movies, anything that's aimed at children. And I'm afraid the educational system, of which I can't speak because I don't have kids, but I know you guys are able to speak to it. Once again, sexualizing children at a very early age and then trying to convince them that they, prefer this or that or something out of 37 different options. This is absolutely insane.
Well, John,
And how do how do you confront it other than, well, go
it's,
ahead.
well, the worst thing I would say is when you, as a mother, you're complaining about it and you're told things like, well, this is just a school play. Or you're told things like, well, don't let them get to you. They're just throwing you off on other things. Actually, they're affecting my child. My
Yeah.
child is coming home asking me questions. My child is growing up way faster with being told things that I didn't learn until I was about 17 or 18. They're stealing my child's innocence. And then you have multiple YouTubers, multiple people mocking it and acting like I'm a crazy person because I'm picking up my child from school. I'm receiving the questions to that I'm like, why is my 11-year-old or 8-year-old asking me this? And then I'm being told by society that I am a helicopter mom or that I'm making something out of it because I'm some kind of Trumpster, I'm some kind of political hack, or I'm a troll, or I am just getting all wigged out. And it's not as bad as it is, but they're not the one tucking their child in. They're not the one answering questions. And they're not the one watching their kid try to be way more mature than they are instead of playing with the toys that are age appropriate. Because the world is trying to make them an adult, all the while trying to put in their head there's too many people. We're too much of a problem. We don't need to have babies. We need to accept anything goes. The family doesn't matter. Only trust your friends or your teachers. Ignore your parents. Your parents are hyper vigilant. And, if your parents get all wigged out, just hide it from them and don't tell them because they're too ridiculous to be able to deal with it. Now, I'm
Well,
the one
there's
dealing with
one
that.
more. There's one more, Amber, and
What?
that is humans are not worthy. We are not worthy. That's sort of woven into everything now.
Yeah.
Especially like when you talked about switching algorithms and the Green New Deal and all that. It's like
Yeah.
humans aren't worth saving. Maybe we'll save the animals, but everything's disintegrating and it's all our fault. So it is
Yeah,
a horrible
but they're
mess.
not living this where we have to answer to these children, where we watch it on a day-to-day basis. Then you have people that either have grown children, don't have children, or think it's funny that, because they let their kid do things when they were much younger, tell me that I'm crazy or that I'm, stressed out or I'm worrying about it too much. Those people are so much of the problem. And I'm very mad at those who are just acting like I'm the issue for questioning why they're doing this to my children.
Well, it reminds me of the, a long time ago, convincing families to send the Native children to the schools or whatever so they can learn better, get a better life, whatever. And that's not the only example, because there's so many examples like, oh, send them off to prep school. They're going to do so much better. Anything that's like removing from the family, you know. And it's like, it doesn't have to be the cookie cutter family, you know. We're not perfect. We have all kind of patchwork families. It's not about perfection. It's about real community, like true community, you know, people that care about each other. They do their best to understand each other, love each other even if they don't understand each other, have food, you know, make sure that the resources are available to the needs of the people. And that is really, when we talk about, you know, what do we see in 2023, what do we see on the horizon, short term, and how do we see it playing out? I really think that we are, and when it comes to, you know, we say we're in a war and we talk about this, it's like we prepare for the worst and we strive for the best. So we do understand that people are falling as we fight. You know, I meant literally when you talk about a stage or a field, you know, you have dancers, you have players, they're putting their heart completely to the limit. And it is something worth fighting for. We're not going to give up. And I feel like what we're going to end up cutting out in this process, and you think about a war and people think, oh, there's this ideal, and of course there is, but that doesn't mean that there's not trouble along the way. And so this trouble that we are watching to our amazement, or whatever position, you know, hopefully we don't stay in anxiety too long, because especially when we have little kids, it is very anxiety ridden. But I think that's part of where the faith comes in, where we it, I'll just end this rant with this and just say that a lot of people go to the show and they don't want to see backstage. They have elected to see a show. Okay. And so those of us that have been backstage, we can't laugh at the people or make fun of the people that haven't seen what's been going on backstage. What we can do now is get the story out, just like normal times when it was like, oh, this is what was going on backstage. Look at these bloopers. And people are like, oh, wow, in my mind, this continues the story. I didn't need to be backstage. I liked getting the illusion of the show, but now I'm seeing what was behind stage, and wow, I'm in awe, or I'm whatever emotions we have to do to deal with it. So I do see like waves of more and more people, at least to whatever varying degrees, understanding things or picking up on something, whatever that might be.
Even in Massachusetts, you mean? Because
Even
I worry about Massachusetts. I'm afraid that
you should.
the
You
liberal
should.
fairy dust has just been sprinkled on Massachusetts.
You should, but I will say, just for one fact of the matter, not to like say anything, but when I was down in Maryland, I did see more weird things in the sky. We see weird stuff in the sky here, but you guys have like more going on with like the military bases and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
so that's one good thing. But yeah, we have that liberal, we have that freezing temperature.
Well, one of the points you made, Tara, is a really good one. I think that the people watching the play, I think once they see behind stage, they're going to feel really tricked, you know, and that's going to be really difficult. And so I think we can all steel ourselves. Your point was excellent about having compassion for that moment and being there. There's going to be you know, I mean, once you know what we know about these, you know, the whole process, and most of us were able to avoid taking the measures, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter. I mean, we've all been sullied with all of this stuff, because it isn't just in the injection. I think we're breathing it. It's all over everywhere. So
I don't agree with that. Just for the record, I
So
don't
maybe
I don't think it's everywhere. I don't.
Well, hopefully not.
Not everywhere, but I think we're seeing tremendous resilience too. That all these things, and going back reading Alana's book, and all the horrible things that they've done that we didn't know about, but were horrific. Here we are. It hasn't. All those plans have not come to fruition, and because of the resilience and what we are biologically and spiritually and everything, it hasn't. So far so good, and we can keep going. I mean, it isn't good, but it's there is a resilience, and I think that that's an important message to keep taking to people that are maybe devastated and maybe dealing with rough stuff ahead, and not that we won't either, but to really help support that
So
resilience.
maybe the way we say it is because I've always gotten upset when someone tells me what my experience is a school play, because it's actually physical, it's mental, it's
Mhm.
spiritual. It doesn't feel like a play because I'm affected by it. A school play is
Mhm.
when you're sitting in the audience and somebody else is going through it and I'm just enjoying the show. This is not enjoyable. And then when
Yeah.
someone wakes up from it, if you were to say, well, you're watching a school play, they're going to not listen to us, because what they're going to say is, well, then why am I affected? Well, then why is this happening if this is a school play? So maybe it should be, they're so insincere. They call it a school play, even though they've thrown us in it and made us wade through it and get hurt and traumatized by it. And they oversimplify it to gaslight us, and they call it a school play. So maybe we find a way to then let them know that they're toying with us, like my kitten's in the back playing with toys, like a cat and a mouse. And they're
Yeah.
just saying, oh, it's just a school play. Meanwhile, we're suffering and traumatized.
Mhm.
So maybe we let them know we feel your pain. We know it's hard to see what's going on, but they're minimizing what we're actually experiencing by saying, hey, oh, you're just in a school play. Well, then why am I bleeding if it's just a school
Mhm.
play?
But you can always just turn on your television and watch the football game, or the World Cup, or I mean, nothing's more important than the World Cup. So forget all that stuff and just kick back and get yourself a six pack and watch the guys, out there. I wish they wouldn't do those headers though. I worry, when one of them, the two guys hit their heads together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, I worry more about them than I get joy out of the game.
I would be worried if I was any of their parents. Definitely.
Yeah, if I'm forced to watch a game, I'd rather go outside and play it. So,
Mhm.
and that's the issue that I'm dealing with right now.
Well,
Because I'm forced into the school play, I don't want to watch it because it actually affects me. So I want to grab the ball, run a touchdown, and say, won't start, nothing, won't be nothing. So I'm looking for a middle ground there where I don't have to join the school play, but I can affect to make it stop. So informing people, reacting but turning the TV off, not participating in the game, but making them have to stop the game as well.
here's I guess a kind of an interesting little thing I was reading today, and I said, "Wow, that's a good example." This was Lyndon LaRouche. Okay, I was reading him this morning, and I often do. The stuff in his old writings is really good. Anyway, he raised the question: um, if you ask somebody, and I guess he was talking about women and women's suffrage, and is it it's a good thing. We're glad we have women's suffrage. But here's the question: he says, I ask a woman, are you in favor of protective tariffs or free trade? Right now, how does she answer? Does she know anything about tariffs or free trade or anything like that? Well, hopefully she does, and she could do. But what she says to him is, well, I feel like the folks that around here believe that free trade is the American way. And what I've heard from that is that she has this feeling that comes from her neighborhood and maybe she didn't ever have anybody sit down and say, look her in the eye and say, now listen, free trade is the way to go. But somehow she got it from the neighborhood or from just a feeling that, well, I think free trade's the way to go. And she was committed to that because it was a feeling inside of her that free trade is the right answer. And this is, the reason that I raise that is because I do believe that a lot of the propaganda is aimed at our feelings as opposed to our intellects. And we are trained. Another thing that he said in a different place, which I think is equally valuable, is that we are trained to define ourselves by what we don't like. What I don't like, cars going too fast down my street. That's who I am. I'm the guy that hates those cars going down the street too fast. Well, the connection there is that in neither case are you making any rational analysis of the situation and coming to your own judgment. You're just going by your gut, and that's what I think is the trick here, that we're being dumbed down to the point where we don't even consider the idea of running the idea through the process of thinking, and we just go with, well, I feel like free trade, and if you had to vote on it, you'd vote for free trade. You wouldn't think.
That's part of the insidiousness of the way the language has been twisted, because the free trade agreements
sounds so
are all
good.
trickery. Yeah, it sounds like what you want. It sounds like that's the right words. That's what we want to have happen. And it's the opposite, that a big company can sue a government if they want to put restrictions on, people having livable wages or whatever. It's the opposite, really. But so that's the craziness we're up against.
And it's all media control. I mean, the thing that I am absolutely certain of is that the military and the spy people have been controlling all the mass media from the beginning. There's never ever been a time that they were not controlling the mass media. And right now, I mean, it's the most control ever. And like you're saying, they're always throwing different stuff at us and different things to get us all excited about, overwhelming us so that we can't even spend the time to think, even if we remembered that we have a duty.
Did you see that show on Newsbenders that Peter and George were talking about? It's an old show from the 60s in Britain, and it really is about the news guys are at the top of the heap. They're controlling the military, and it's I don't know if it's a sitcom. It's not very funny, but it's sort of how this newscaster is brought into creating this illusion that fits their plans.
What was it called again? I keep forgetting.
Newsbenders. I had to search for it, but they did a sort of watch show on the last Peter and George show on that. It'll blow you away, John, because it's it really reveals exactly what's been happening for all that time in a sad way. We're all dupes.
Well, I know the Zelensky story. That's all staged. I mean, everything. It's really high tech staging and computer graphics and everything. What a horrible war that is. As I've said before, I'm kind of a junkie to the day-to-day sit reps. I want to know where the front line is. I want to know if the Russians are going to get into Bakhmut, or where's the next assault going to be? Because I want this war over, and I just keep hoping that something dramatic will happen and it'll end, but they're not going to let it end. It's just going to be like Vietnam. It's going to be like Afghanistan. It's just their latest way to keep the military industrial complex making money for us, because I need it for my 401k, right?
Yeah. My friend's family member is deployed in Syria right now. And so I've heard some things about Turkish and Syrian and a bunch of allies lining up over there of the border of Syria and Turkey. So I mean, that's not anything that you'd hear on the news. One other thing interesting that I did hear last night was, did you guys hear this defector from the Wuhan labs? This virologist named, I'm not sure her first name, but her last name is Lee. And she was, I can send you guys a link, but she was being questioned by a whole panel, and she has she's here in the States, but she has a bunch of people following her in China, and they've even like kind of come to her. I don't know if they locked up her parents or they kind of were going after her parents, trying to like get them to get her to come back.
Mm.
And so she has kind of like a heavy accent, but if you really concentrate and listen to her, you can understand what she's saying. And everyone's asking a ton of great questions on the panel, and she just has a lot of good information as to what, like, when they were like, oh, even with the whole wet market thing, like they had a lot of questions beforehand to try to like formulate that, whatever. So it's very interesting. I'll give you guys a link.
Yeah, I would like to hear it. Sorry about the lighting in the house that's going on and off, because my kittens have learned how to turn off the light and then change the settings on it. And then they do it, and then they look at my response, and I try to shake something to try to get them to stop, and then they do it again, then they turn it off, and they turn it back on. So they're mischievous cutie pies. It's a Pony Boy and Princess Buttercup at it again.
Pony Boy.
Have you resorted to the squirt gun method yet?
No, but I've threatened it. They just don't know yet.
Well, gosh, we've spent an hour already, and it's been a pleasure for me. And we should just keep getting together once a month or so, and
Yes.
and check in, because I really do. Each one of you has a wonderful perspective, and I appreciate your comments about the show. And I'm so excited now that Marcia's last day of work is this Friday, so she will
Go Marsha. Go Marsha.
and she has generously offered to do some production help here at the show. So I think things will be looking up here in many ways. I want to really start republishing some of the old stuff, some of the books that we lost when we lost the big channel, and Secret Team, and all the Fletcher Prouty stuff. So many of the books that I want everybody to have access to and to be able to listen to. And so I'm going to try to spend a lot of time republishing those of the first books that I read on the channel called McDuff, Kennedy's Man to Smash the CIA. And
Is this your new website you're talking about? Are you going to post them there?
Yeah, right now I'm still working on how to understand StreamYard. And so until I feel until we've got a little bit more, and I think Marcia's going to help me a lot with that. But see, neither of us have any experience building websites.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I loved the Christmas songs that you guys did. I really enjoyed that. Was
me too. That was great. Thank you.
I was baking for all the neighbors and some of our clients, and I was just like, we were all singing together, and we were all like, in the kitchen having a great time. So I appreciated hearing that.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Well,
thank you.
We appreciate the warm hand, so to speak. Thank you very much. And Marcia and I, hopefully we can do some more singing together. She's so talented, and now that she's off work and able to devote some time to just personal interests, well, I think it's going to be a good year.
Yay.
And I wish you all the best, happy and wonderful and successful and illuminating, educational, and and kind new year. How's that?
That's right. Let's just keep teaching each other. Have an awesome end of the year. Happy New Year, everybody, and be blessed.
Yeah. Return of the light.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you, McDuff.
Merry
Live.
Christmas and a Happy New Year to everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. God
All right.
bless.
Thank you, Ospreys. Bye now.
Eek,
Bye.
eek.